You said multiple times earlier that you don't believe the bull run is over. So do you also feel that like Bitcoin has the opportunity to head into like the 120, 130, 140 levels? Are you anticipating a really wild, like crazy liquidity injection, QE? Like what are some of your thoughts on that?
So, what's going on with the global economy is if we don't get an injection of liquidity, then we're looking at a crash. I don't think Trump
Yeah.
wants that. So, we,
But what is your opinion about the 4 year cycle? November, December have typically been when Bitcoin has like its complete blow off every 4 years, which so far is the truth. November 2025. Do you think we have the juice to make it there? Obviously, it's very speculative, but from the astrological perspective, I would love to know your thoughts.
astrologically and fundamentally, I have got the one and only Waters above back with me. We just did a deep dive in his private university and that community, just talking a little bit about markets and what we see coming up. The last time we were together on YouTube was August, and we were talking about how the market was likely to get moving. And it has done that. We've gotten a new president of the United States since Waters Above and I last spoke, and we want to dive into a couple of things, what we see as it relates to crypto, some of the predictions we've made, some of the bubblings we're hearing amongst the community about altcoins. When Altseason, what about the memes? What about the rest of the rally? We want to touch on that as well as life outside of crypto and a couple of other things. Our conversations tend to get a bit artistic and tangential, and that's what's fun, at least for the two of us. If anything, at least we'll have fun. How you doing, man?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel.
Yeah, I mean, bro, I'm doing amazing. I appreciate you taking the time to become a special guest on at Waters Above University. And we had about a 2 hour conversation. It was amazing to hear about your story. There's so many parallels between you and I in regards to upbringing in New York City, having this music kind of career path attempt, and then pivoting utilizing esoterica in our current business models, and also being pretty neutral in our ways of operation, whether that be from the financial, spiritual, physical, like all the kind of holistic, everything meeting as one. I feel like we have a lot of alignment in all of that. So the one thing that's really amazing though about us connecting is you are a professional astrologer and I am not. I do not call myself an astrologer. I utilize astrology. I utilize some of the mythological components, probably primarily. That would be more my sauce. I really love mythology from the esoteric perspective, and the ties back to the human body and the application to these cryptocurrencies. And what I found to be pretty much an undeniable system of taking the mythology and what we would call astrology and applying it to some of these core cryptos that we all hear about, that have kind of made their mark on the universe. And now we're in this place right now where it's pure blown Aquarian economy-esque, where we're feeling specifically in the crypto market that it's just a big gambling casino. Nobody has any trust. Even today with the event with Bybit, that did a number on the sentiment. There's been so many sentiment reset kind of triggers that have been pulled since our last conversation, which was when the market was much lower. People weren't as emotional back then, I feel, because we were kind of at the tail end of a 6, 7 month horizontal trading range for at least Bitcoin. And we were just in that chop. So I feel very similar, and I'm sure you agree, to like Q4 moving into Q1 of 2023 into 2024, where we just had that rise out of October, which was around a solar eclipse as well. And then we pushed up into the March timeframe, and there was just this like, oh, we're back, boys, this like really positive energy. And then it got severed on the Great American Eclipse, which me and you were also in connection, having an interview before that. And again, we're like back in the same kind of vibe where Bitcoin gets pulled up after a total solar eclipse, and we're inching closer to eclipse season very soon. But it's a very, in my opinion, a very negative eclipse energy, this upcoming total lunar eclipse, which will start a lunar cycle And it'll actually be the shortest lunar cycle we've had since 2019. So perhaps we could talk a little bit about that too when we get into like the nitty-gritty of the markets. But what's been some of the things that you've been kind of prepping for the short term? Because it seems right now, and you could disagree with me, it'd be perfectly fine if you do, but I feel the fact that we've had 3 weeks in a row of like really historic crypto, negative crypto events, not just news, but actually events, with one being the biggest liquidation event in the history of crypto, followed by the biggest rug pull of a meme coin in history, funny enough, called Libra, right? Which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then today, this historic event with the hack of Bybit. But yet we're looking at a 95K, we're looking at a 96K Bitcoin, and we're looking at a 260 XRP, and people are losing it. So is that not bullish? Isn't it, in my opinion, one of the most bullish signals of all time when we revisit our last conversation and how people had no emotion at all because they were bored. And now today we're looking at much, much higher prices. I mean, XRP must have been like 45 or 50 cents when we last spoke. Bitcoin was probably like what, 60 maybe. We're looking at a 96K Bitcoin, and the whole vibe is kind of shifting. So I would love to know your take on the astrology of that, because that must be one of the factors, right? The reason that even in appreciated prices, we're getting this like tension, this disbelief, this like worry, the kind of low vibes. What's going on there?
Yeah, there's definitely something astrological to it, but I think even more so, it's more of the monetary dynamics and market psychology. Bull runs always climb a wall of worry, always, and we're always navigating between these emotions of fear and greed, particularly those of us who aren't very disciplined in terms of how we check our emotions as it relates to markets. The easiest way I find to check my emotions is by researching and knowing as much about how the market works as possible and trying to be tapped into different data sources and things that I can check as it relates to my thesis and where the market is headed for the long term. So as long as that's intact, I don't really freak out about what's going on in the short term. In fact, I'm not really tapped into like the minutia of the news like many people who are trading on an emotional perspective might be, because I'm more concerned about what are the fundamentals that even get us to an 100K Bitcoin. Have those fundamentals shifted? In my viewpoint, they have not. So whatever happens in the short term, we're still headed where we're headed until the bull market is completely done. And we're not at that point yet from what I'm seeing from a technical standpoint. So I'll just say that because I think part of what people are feeling, and this is what I was mentioning in our last call, is that people have less money overall. People
Mhm.
are a lot more savvy about the crypto market, and people have seen a lot of propaganda and personal stories, and have seen examples of people making a lot of money during the last bull run. So there's a lot of people positioned to make money in ways that may have worked last cycle that don't necessarily work this cycle. And that happens every cycle, right? That happened last cycle in terms of how people were all about ICOs in 2016, and that was not the move in 2020. We had DeFi summer, and then it went on to be certain alts and memes, and this bull run became meme heavy in the beginning portion of things, and now with the wave of institutions and ETFs, it's like, where is that capital going to go? Real world assets have done very well. So understanding how the narrative shift over time, astrology definitely has a component to play with that. And I think when you look at the positions of the planets, some of that can make a lot more sense. So for example, Jupiter in Gemini. What is Gemini? And this is from the tropical zodiac perspective. There's a value to both zodiacs in the sense that the sidereal zodiac has what are considered to be fixed stars, fixed in place. Are they fixed? Not necessarily, but the location of those stars fit, I would say, almost perfectly to the sidereal zodiac, and those should be looked at. However, when you're splitting an astrological chart, that is supposed to be based on the ecliptic, on the four seasons. And so for that reason, Those of us that use a tropical zodiac, that's why we do so, because that's what the old texts say that should be based on this, the tropical zodiac itself. So when we're looking at Jupiter, the planet of expansion, this gas giant that likes to expand things, that's going to do that because that's his characteristic, no matter what part of the sky it's in. It's expanding Geminian things. What is Gemini? What does that cover? Well, that area of the sky is ruled by the planet Mercury, the messenger. Why is Mercury called the messenger? Well, we have five senses, right? We can smell, see, taste, touch, hear things. That is processed by the brain, and that processing is considered by the ancients to be governed by the energy of Mercury. So how we receive information, transact information, share things, how we transport things, how we communicate, driving, traveling, movement, things related to movement, the flow of information. From the electromagnetic side of things, I believe Mercury is more of the electric side of the component of things, where Venus is more of the magnetic side of things that we're magnetizing to us, where Mercury is more about the electrical transformation of the transmission of information. Okay. So Jupiter is going to expand all of that. And what that means too is market participants are going to be very reactive, maybe more than other times as it comes to little pieces of information. And so we're seeing a lot of that. We've seen a lot of that since Jupiter's entrance into Gemini as of June last year, which that was a time where the market was a little bit more steady, but that's when we started to see any bit of news really pushing the market for a temporary move in ways that were a lot more volatile or drastic than maybe we were quite used to. So there was the issue with uh, the central bank in Japan, violent sharp move then, right? Then it was, the SAM rule with unemployment, violent sharp moves in the market then. And then there was quick retraces or quick, rebalancing with that as well. Oh, we have Trump as our president, quick move. Oh, deep seek AI, quick move to the downside. And then we have moves that happened today off of little pieces of information. But the thing about Jupiter to understand is that it's a gentle planet in the effects that it exhibits. So while we've had these shocking moves, Jupiter is like padding. It wants to expand markets. It wants to expand what it touches. So despite these pieces of information, Gemini, Mercury, that have come in that have disrupted or distorted or brought some volatility to things, overall, while Jupiter is still in the sign of Gemini, markets overall have been supported to the upside. And I don't really see that changing until Jupiter leaves the sign of Gemini this June. That doesn't mean there won't be volatility in the short term. There will be because there's several other planets having their effects. But from an astrological perspective, that is definitely having an effect on the participants just reacting to information on the short term, but that not really having a long-term effect on the market. The
Hmm.
long-term effect that Jupiter has while it's in Gemini from June of 24 to June of 25 is that it wants to support and cushion and kind of hold markets towards the upside. What do we see with a president who was elected during a Jupiter retrograde? A lot of support for AI and crypto, right? These are Geminian things. These are air-based technological things, right? It's not like he said, I want to support, I don't know, like make something up. It's not like he's saying my big concern is the food industry, or my big concern is something that's like land based or fire or watery. These are air components that he's really bullish behind. And if you look at markets, right, I shared this in one of my recent interviews with Lotta, is the market darlings in the S&P have been the Magnificent Seven. Those are all tech companies, are they not? So this is again Jupiter supporting air-based, technological-based inventions and companies in the market. Okay, so that is all astrology that we can see for sure. We have Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Uranus is a technologically revolutionary new tech-based energy. And Taurus is an earthy sign, which is in the traditional second house. Traditionally, the second house supports the first house of the physical body. What supports the physical body? Well, our families, clothing, shelter, food, money, things we put into our mouths, and things that we say. Okay. So Uranus is transit through Taurus for the past 6 years or so, since around 2018 or whenever it made its initial entry has affected people's speech, right? Sometimes people have gotten canceled. Sometimes people have said some extreme stuff over the past couple of years. And we've seen disruptions to currencies. I think Sri Lanka a couple of years ago, their whole current government collapsed in terms of how they were handling money. We've certainly
Mm,
seen banks collapse. We've seen a lot of shocks with crypto ripping to the upside and then ripping down with FTX, ripping down with Bybit and all this type of stuff. So there's a lot of volatility related to these things being affected by the planets, right? Sharing my screen. This is the Magnificent Seven right now, right? You can see Meta, which has a lot of AI things that they're working on, doing very well, while the others, some of them made some gains, like Amazon here is doing all right, Nvidia is doing all right because they got their semiconductor thing, but even these Magnificent Seven during the month of February, they're kind of just meandering sideways. And these are the darlings that have been leading the economy. So this ties back to me saying people have less money than they did before because it's important to understand that after 2020, American companies and companies in general haven't been as strong as they used to be. A lot of companies are still trying to figure out their footing in the world while there's this AI monster growing in the background, waiting to completely revolutionize how
right.
we work. And we'll have shockwaves that really change what some estimates show 70 to 80% of our economies is going to shift.
Yeah.
We might see that many people displaced from the workplace and needing to do different types of work, which you and I have an interest in talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to understand how the longer cycles are affecting what's happening in the short term rather than to be
Hmm.
all hung up on the short term. You know, like short term things are often affected by the moon's placement in astrology and these lunar cycles. The root word lunar is it's in the word lunatic or lunacy,
Hmm.
right? So part of what you and I want to caution people about is like not getting driven crazy by the constant change that happens on a day-to-day basis. That's inherent to our experience. It's all adaptation and change. It's like, I've got this fan on, we've been talking for hours today. Now it's a little bit cold, right? So that's the moon's adaptation. Let me turn this fan off and,
Right.
you know, adjust the temperature in here, right? So all these things fluctuating, though, me turning the fan off, how much of a big effect does that have on my
Right.
total life? Not very much. So in the same vein, you guys, if you know where the market is headed or know what the larger trends are that are impacting the market, you're not going to lose your head over the short term. Right. So this is where I would say let's segue a bit into what's happening with eclipse season, this March
Hmm.
and April, understanding that, okay, Jupiter wants to provide a supporting background between now and June. What are the things that can disrupt? Like one of your members asked about Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde. How might that impact markets? And we were talking about how that's actually happening during eclipse season with a bunch of square aspects happening in the chart. Okay. So all of that configuration speaks to a very difficult March. But like you said, we have a bunch of difficulties happening in the market as of today, right now, and we're still in the high 90s, right? So if that's what you're seeing, particularly for those of you who know technical analysis, you're seeing candles, holding on to support in areas, even though we're having these moments. These are things that you can even hear the tone in Jordan's voice. Like some of this should give you a sense of bullishness. Like, wow, Bybit had an issue and we're still in the upper 90s. Interesting, you know? So I would look at these things too, particularly when we have events like today. Understand that this is the worst of it when these events happen. Unless something else breaks tomorrow, then you'll see that reaction in the chart. But usually when these things happen, unless the whole entire system is broken, typically what we see are V bottom recoveries, right? We see algorithms jumping in to long these things unless people are going to go in and change their algorithms. But they're not going to do that unless, like what I'm saying here, the overall direction of things, the overall fundamentals are still the same. There hasn't been any major hacks to the code of Bitcoin or to Ethereum or to any of these layer ones. There hasn't been any major legislation that's against crypto. In fact, all of what we've hearing lately is pro crypto. So it's
Right.
very important, you guys, to zoom out. whether it's on the chart or on what's happening in the real world to put context to what happens on the day to day. That's very important for you day traders and those who are in the in the charts more frequently is just to keep in mind now that you know a little bit of how the planets are working is am I being driven crazy by change? Am I becoming a lunatic because I'm too zoomed in? Right? Should I look at a daily chart or a weekly chart or a monthly chart? You know, because those are the charts honestly that I prefer, the 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, right? So maybe looking at those will help calm down people's perspective. I don't think the average investor or trader is doing that. And I think that to answer your earlier question, I think that's part of
Hmm.
what's affecting them so much and bringing so much volatility is
Hmm.
there's a sense of lunacy with being too zoomed in and people have less money to play with. We haven't gotten stimmy checks, and we're not dealing with an economy that's just going into 2020. We're dealing with an economy that's dealt with 4 or 5 years of struggling after that,
Right.
people having less money, and 4 to 5 years of the inflation that was caused from the money printing that happened in 2020. It was all sweet in 21 when that money was slushing through markets. We're not in the same scenario. The cost of living's gone up for everybody. So everybody, although things cost more and maybe people's wages are higher, we can buy less things. And so the fact that we can buy less things and a lot more people are invested into crypto using old means of investing into crypto that might not necessarily benefit them this cycle. I think that's why we have the scenario we have today is
Hmm.
maybe people are too invested in memes and they have less money to, pay for the necessities. And so that is going to lean more on the fear side of the equation, on the emotional balance. It's like, wow, maybe I'm really over leveraged here and this isn't moving the way it did in 21. I think that's a situation that some people unfortunately are in. And
Hmm.
hopefully the remainder of this conversation can help them navigate the rest of this bull run because it's not over. You might just need to rotate or rechange your thinking in terms of your positioning.
Precisely. And as for comparisons between specifically Bitcoin for 2021 versus today, this cycle is healthier for Bitcoin because we had 7 to 8 months of trading on top of the prior all-time highs, which we did not have in 2021. We just shot straight through the 2017 peak, and that was why when eclipse season, or sorry, lunar cycle hit in May of 2021, we had that very dramatic crash down. And we did effectively recover for that double top, but the point that I'm making here is there was no structure built because of all that liquidity just injected in a moment where people did have the stimmy checks, people did have this kind of lockdown phase where they had time to research more into what was going on and the fanaticism about a you know cryptocurrency and the new technologies that were forming from it such as DeFi or the NFT craze and then there was also just the element of people making money, right? When you learn or other people are making money, you're like, how can I make money too? And I think a lot of that was systemic of the Doge pump and things that were going on with Elon over on Twitter before he acquired it. So yeah, there's plenty of different elements. But Bitcoin is actually kind of doing what it usually does. It's been pretty much copying past cycles. And this cycle is healthier for Bitcoin.
Yes.
And it's the altcoins which most people kind of over expose themselves to. They have to feel the pain of not being on a more, not having a more balanced portfolio. And this is very controversial for me in my position because people are aware as a conscious investor, I'm not here to pick sides. Like I'm just seeing it for what it is. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I'm not like only ETH holder. I'm not in the XRP army. I don't pick teams here. I'm an investor. It's up to me to look at these charts and to determine what's overbought, what's oversold, and where would it likely make the most sense for me to position specific percentage allocations to those particular opportunities, right?
Right.
So when I'm looking at the macro Bitcoin chart and I'm just seeing cycle after cycle after cycle, it's repeating this pattern and that would be dumb to not bet on. And it would be dumb to put all of my money in something like Melania token, right? And it seems to be like, why do we even need to teach this to people still? Well, it could be the conditions of this kind of mercurial thing that you brought up, or there's plenty of other elements to at play here, but and even from the exoteric side of there just being less earning, more spending going on with just the devaluation of the dollar, inflation, cost of living going up, all these other elements. And on top of that, more layoffs, right? You're seeing layoffs happen right now in an economy that doesn't have this lockdown enforced, mandatory lockdowns. And why are we seeing that? Well, because we're moving more into the Aquarian economy. We're moving more into a world that will have more artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. And I mean, I have some scary theories for 26. Maybe we don't really need to get into it right now, but I do caution people that, like, if you're somebody who is more inclined to play the gambling casino of crypto, whether that be with meme coins or that be with other more speculative, like venture capital plays, just be very cautious at this time to be getting involved in that shit because although maybe one person does very well, it's like at the expense of 99 other people. So this market is not about value anymore. It's beyond speculation where the value is almost not even part of the conversation. And I'm even seeing that. The last thing I'll mention is I'm even starting to see that creep up a little bit into the Bitcoin and into the XRP community, those two communities, which one of them is on the side of banking, the other one is on the side of becoming unbanked, right? It's kind of funny that that's the dynamic here, but these are two massive communities, one
Mhm.
of which is kind of on the side of promoting the Aquarian economy, whilst the other one is more about like, if we are to have an Aquarian economy, how could we be sovereign in that process? Well, we
Yep.
know with the institutional involvement in Bitcoin that that's changed up the conversation. We
Mhm.
went from like not wanting these institutions to now it's like, please, Larry Fink, pump my bags. So we're seeing mass dilute, like mass
Mass delusion.
could, yeah, just like nobody even
This
knows what they stand for anymore. They don't even know what they represent. So I know I didn't want to confuse anyone with what I'm saying here. I'm just trying to lay down some of the foundation and the guide to why this cycle might feel a little awkward at this stage. It's because we've lost the sense of identity behind the people, and it's now becoming purely about lawsuits, the SEC's involvement here, BlackRock. State
Mhm.
Street MicroStrategy. I mean, we got some of the taste of that stuff with Michael Saylor in the prior cycle, but today it's just so much of like, please, can some elite person pump my bags?
Yep.
And you're like asking for the slavery, and it's very strange. So I think we're going through a value renaissance as much as we're going through a confusion vortex of like, what do I even stand for and represent? And again, that might be something that's making it so people are like, fuck it, I might as well just throw my money into Hawk Tuah coin because it's all bullshit. And maybe it's that defeatist mode that people get into during like these financial situations because I think 1920 or post World War II, like during World War II, in those environments where people are like worried, like, is there going to be a war? Is there going to be like a housing crisis? Is there going to be this? People do start to become very, very gambler mentality, and like all the fundamentals get thrown under the rug.
They do. They do. And part of what happened in the 20s is they had markets really rip higher too. And so that's part of what we all lived through with 21 is seeing markets rip higher and seeing a bunch of people make a bunch of money. So when you see that and your cost of living is going up, people are inevitably going to say, I have a yield problem. I need to figure out. They might not know all the mechanics behind what's happening, but what they're feeling is really real. And that's what pushes people who would ignore markets entirely into saying, you know what, let me look at this. Wait, this dog coin made how much money for this person quickly? And so it's really the greed aspect of trying to solve a really real problem that people really have that pushes them into the emotional side of speculating. They call it investing, but really they're speculating on something that has a bunch of bots ready to snipe positions, and they're
Right.
basically entering into something that they're not equipped to deal with. It's like, oh, I can probably beat that person up. It's like, the whole stereotype of every teenage guy thinks they can fight and fuck, right? Or something like that. It's almost like thinking like, oh, so and so bought, such and such a coin. I can do that too. And then people get into these situations and it's like they get hit in the face with people who have been in these markets and they are, they're looking to poach retail essentially. They're waiting for you to enter and be the
Right.
little guppy that goes into the mouth of the whale. And so part of what you and I talk about and want to warn caution people against is that do you really do you really understand all the details of what's affecting or guiding your decisions? And that's why we're coming back to this conversation of value. Because if your position in this is, okay, I'm going to do this to speculate, a bunch of people are making money, I think I can do this too. Well, then you better get serious about that and understand that you're on the side of playing a win-loss game, and most people lose. So you better, if this is your interest, go down the rabbit hole of being a winner and looking at things like, okay, so there's bots involved, there's that and that, and getting very nerdy about crypto, which I don't think is what many of you want to do, to speculate around coins that aren't necessarily providing value to the end user, is it? Some of you might, but if you really look at what you're doing and what you're spending your time on, some of you might be better off building a business that provides value to people and creating relationships with customers that would love to be your clients for a lifetime. Because at least then, that way, not only do you have real human relationships, but you might be setting up systems that put cash in your pocket that allow you to fund your lifestyle for longer periods of time than maybe messing around with memes. It's just a thought. I bought memes. I'm not going to be buying any more this year. I have a portfolio dedicated to memes, but that's not all my net worth. It's not even anywhere close, right? And I think that's part of why we're talking about this, is that there are people who see the 10x, the 100x, the 1000x, and they think that they can just beat everybody who's doing this, and maybe they don't really understand all the components of this. Whereas if you're investing rather than speculating, value can be created for everybody. It's really understanding what you're investing in and not doing things that disrupt other market participants. Like, there's people who buy and hold Bitcoin because they really genuinely believe in it. Bitcoin has issues that you and I have talked about, so we're not necessarily going to get down into that. But the point is that
Sure.
the approach is more about value, and so I think that that's something to really consider, even from the day-to-day basis, and not just investing. Like, what is the value of what I'm doing? You know, I think that's just a conscious question to be asking yourself as you move through the 20, the 16, 18 hours you're awake on a day-to-day basis. Right? What is the value of this meal that I'm eating or drinking? How is this going to impact me in a couple of hours? Am I going to feel better? Am I going to feel worse? You know? And so it's really important to understand the results of what you're doing and all the components of what you're doing as much as possible. Speculating means you're buying a position low and you're trying to sell it high. Or if you're shorting it, you're looking to buy high and then sell low to make a profit on the other side of it. It's just the inverse of the same thing, right? So if that's what you're doing, that's a waiting game. You're not making money while that's happening, while you're speculating on this change to occur on that delta, right? So if you're in a position where this is all your hopes and dreams, where you're just waiting for that change so that you can eventually sell high or sell low, and then there's going to be capital gains associated with that, and then there's waiting associated with that. Does it really make sense for all of your net worth to be in that, or does it really make sense for you to be banking your entire future on waiting and hoping? I would suggest that you, from a probability standpoint, understand that there's not 100% chance that you're going to be right about that positioning. And the timing of that might not even occur when you think it happens. Those of you who've been watching me have seen that, where I made a prediction. Maybe the timing was a week early or a week late or a couple weeks early, or a couple weeks late, right? So doesn't it make sense to have other means of accumulating value or sharing value with other people other than speculating, particularly with memes like Melania? It's just a thought, you guys.
Sound words of wisdom, and something I completely agree with, and I tapped into in 2024, and hence why I created Waters Above University, because I was like, I need to offer my skills and my talents in this particular field of earning cash flow, because cash flow is king. Sure,
Mhm.
everyone out there can think cash is trash, but cash flow is king. And the only people that are struggling in this world right now are the ones that are like biting their nails as the charts are like flip-flopping around, are the ones that haven't created a cash flow system, or their whole source of income is through something that is controlled by outside sources and not by the value that they provide the world for their goods and services. So it's a very interesting dynamic right now tap into and just be like, yeah, well, if I only had $500, should you put it all into a meme coin or should you probably put most of it, if not all of it, at that level into starting a business? Which, by the way, Waters Above was started with easily $500. I could
Mm.
break the whole thing down. I had
Yeah.
a 2015 refurbished MacBook that I wanted it because I like the OG USB ports in it, like not this new USB-C shit. So
Yeah.
this thing I got refurbished. I forgot the website, but it was like I think $370. And then I'm using the same microphone that I first bought, which was like 110. But back when I started, I was using the built-in microphone on my laptop, that 2014, whatever, 2015 refurbished MacBook. So I got started on Waters Above with the free Canva account, just the basic version laptop that was refurbished laptop, speaking directly into the built-in mic. It was like barely any startup cost. All I was
Mhm.
monetizing was my knowledge, my wisdom, my strategy, and my truth. And it was just about being vulnerable with like throughout the process and allowing people to see more of my personality through things like live streams, etc. You know? So everyone is holding a device right now that could turn them into a multimillionaire. It's just we abuse it or it is weaponized because we allow it to become weaponized against us. So there's no excuses, is what I'm trying to say. If you have $500 and that's all you have to your name, this is probably the most important time to tap into what I'm saying right now, which should be fucking incredibly motivating because how much money do people blow on a university that's now deemed useless?
Yeah.
Or it wasn't useless. You tapped into the career path, but you've learned that like you don't really resonate with it, and it required 4 to 6 years of commitment to a university to then get into a career path that maybe just your parents thought was what was right for you, and it had
Right.
nothing to do with you at all. So all I'm trying to say here is like it's not that nothing doesn't have any value. Maybe the Melania coin rug scam was what woke you up to being more cautious about your portfolio. That could be in and of itself a lesson learned, and therefore it's teaching you, right? Even getting hacked or something, like hopefully it just teaches you to have better security protocols and get into hardware wallets, etc. Anyways, I think these are the things that maybe need to be spoken about a little bit more. But what I see is, especially across the, and I'm not going to talk about anyone directly, but like when I tap into so-called crypto YouTube, it's all like, get this Bybit referral link and start leverage trading today. It's like that's their product that they're selling people. And I'm like, fuck, dude, this is so dangerous for this to be the methodology for these
Yeah.
people to earn income on 500, 600, a million follower YouTube social accounts. Their whole
Don't love it.
business model is selling people into getting a referral bonus on a leverage trading you know, platform. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, you know who makes the most money on that? The fucking exchange. Because whether you get liquidated or whether you make money or whatever rug pull, if something gets delisted, they're making money on every trade with fees, right? So, like, you need to tap into really the machinations of what all of this is to become more savvy about it, and then you could determine better how do you want to allocate your additional funds. And if like people just heard that stream of consciousness from you before and what I just said now, they would be like, oh, damn, that wasn't what was presented to me when I was being yelled at by like an O-face thumbnail telling me that,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and again, I'm not trying to talk shit. I'm just trying to be real right now. Like, somebody needs to say it. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm just being like this particularly because of the environment we're in. If we were in like the bottom of 2020, I'd be like, have fun at the casino, boys, because
Right.
everything was
Right. Yeah.
incredibly low. But
Mhm.
today we're kind of dealing with an environment where not only are things high, but they're very uncertain. So look at Airbnb prices. It's fucking crazy. Look at grocery prices. So we don't really even know what value is for the stuff that we absolutely need. Like you need housing, you need food, you need water, you need energy, but they're all going up.
They're
So
all.
I'm not sure how we could pivot this in a way that is a little bit more inspiring, but all I'm trying to say, I guess, is that Sama's dead on. Like, considering creating a business right now is huge. And that was the biggest motivator for me in 2025. How can I teach people how to make businesses?
Mm. Yeah, man. It's all about value creation and being able to support the lifestyle that you want to live. One of the things that I talk about how Bitcoin could potentially be, not potentially, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Trojan horse for other government related
Hmm.
initiatives, is even what you said about cash flow and how those who are wealthy don't worry about that. There was a, what's different about this cycle compared to the last one in 2020 is staking has by and large been removed from a lot of cryptos due to governments. And that's one of the things that if you have ears to hear and eyes to see, staking was an opportunity for crypto to produce what? Cash flow and revenue for holders. And what did governments do? They took that away from us. So look at the predicament that we're in now. Life is more expensive, both outside of crypto. So a lot of off ramps were taken away too. So you've got people who maybe even they made a buck, they can't even off ramp the way they would like. You know, you have people who put a lot of their money in the memes that have disappeared, right? So just be aware of the game that's being played. While some of this might seem depressing if it's the first time you've heard of some of this stuff, it's really to educate that you navigate it better, right? It's like, oh, should I really be spending all this time speculating on something that might drop 80% if I'm not really prepared for that? Like if I lose that time, if I blow 3 years of investing in memes or in Bitcoin by either getting rugged or by not selling the top, which is another conversation of should you even be trying to sell the top, is like that time disappears, you guys. So what's your backup? Or is if this is your should this really be your plan A? If this is your plan A, I think is what we're getting at just so that you guys have a realistic sense of what the risks are. Because again, a lot of these O-face thumbnails might not talk about that. They might just cover the potential gains. And yeah, there are plenty of potential gains to be made. You've made calls that have made people plenty of money if they took them. So have I. And the inverse is there too. If people don't know what risk management is, or if they didn't take profits, or any of the things that could occur if you don't know what you're doing, right? So we're just being cautionary in ways that maybe others might not be because of where we're at. I do not think the bull run is over, but like I said, this time last year is we're nearing the end and people need to really adjust their expectations and make sure they're taking profits as we get near that top, right? One of the comments I hate the least is why are you taking profits if the top isn't in yet, Mr. Predictor? It's like, whoa, really? Really? That's what you're asking me? Why am I making money even though if the top is not in yet? Like it's just
Yeah.
scary the things that people will say or think and then actually have money invested in this market. I'm taking profits because if I don't, somebody else will, and I'm going to be looking at all my gains going away. You need to
Yeah.
understand playing in, guys. That's what
Or
we're saying.
inversely, like when people like, why aren't you selling? Like people come to me all the time. They're like, why aren't you selling? And it's like, ah, here we are.
Here we
Here we are.
go.
And it's, I guess I understand the responsibility I have in my position, but then also I feel like sometimes I wonder, even if I told you I was selling, if it wasn't whatever arbitrary profit percentage that you've kind of painted in your consciousness, you wouldn't follow it either. Because in
Yeah.
2021, when XRP went up to almost $2, I was publicly telling people that I'm selling right now, $50, $60, $70, $80, and I was getting crucified. People thought I was fucking out of my mind, but it was because I had no reputation.
Mhm.
So nobody listened to me back then, and I respect that. I understand it. I get it, guys. Why should I listen to somebody who has 1,000 followers on YouTube? So that my whole point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hmm?
Well, the other problem with that too is people will get fed poisonous sacred cows through the news, and that's by design. Like the whole with the 2021 cycle too, the whole I remember seeing this phrase that I didn't really quite see before in markets, diamond hands,
Yeah.
upvotes with diamond hands. I'm never selling. Yeah, bro, that's totally awesome. Like, okay, like you're lying. You just want liquidity. Like that's what you and people they if you're new to that and you're a community-based caring person, you're like, oh wow, yeah, we're gonna fight the institution. I'm gonna buy GameStop and I'm never gonna sell this. This is part of the learning lessons or the tuition that you guys, I mean, look at these as learning lessons. Like, let's just not repeat the same
Hmm.
mistakes here, right? Some of this you need to understand, not only with markets, but life in general, because when we talk about esoterica, whether it's numerology or astrology, this can draw sensitive, caring people whom maybe in some cases are naive about the whole world, how the world works. You and I, New Yorkers, we don't play that shit. Like there's monsters out there
All right.
who are looking at you as food and will eat your lunch and laugh at you for allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
They exist in every field of life. We're just talking about human beings here, right? You
Right.
can label them crypto investors, you can label them whatever, but there are humans out there that will do that, and they exist in the world of investing. So just be careful what you're hearing and who you're taking advice from, because that diamond hand stuff is a prime example of someone who doesn't want you to sell so that they can take profits and sell on you, right?
Yeah,
So
there's so much to that. And I kind of want to shift gears for us and talk about what you feel is going to occur around eclipse season. We have the total lunar eclipse 13th through the 14th of March. And then we have the following day, Mercury stations retrograde. So kind of like a weird setup because the last time we saw that with the start of a total lunar eclipse and a Mercury retrograde at the same time
mm,
was back in May of 2021, which was Bitcoin's like 55% correction that
yeah,
effectively kind of ended the alt season.
mm,
But remember, we were in an alt season at the time. So those that are listening right now, like alt season could be whatever you want it to be at this point. It's become like a fucking buzzword. Some people think of it as like we must be in price discovery. Some people look at it from a market cap perspective. Some people just don't believe in it at all. Some people say no alt season. Some people say it's gonna come and it'll be just like 2021. So it very much is the flavor that you want it to be on the individual or intellect or like the knowledge that you have. Were you gonna say something, brother?
yeah. Alt season's personal, isn't it? It's when your alts
Yeah,
go
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Really being honest.
Yeah, yeah. They're
People are
like,
in alt season right now, but most are
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Like, so from a technical perspective, you can look at Bitcoin dominance to kind of gauge where alt season is at, as
right.
well as like the total crypto market caps. I think from a technical perspective, those are valuable to look at to see where we're
Right.
at.
It's pretty much Bitcoin dominance conversation for the majority of people. Like that's where most of us on a technical perspective settle, where we're like, when we see a noticeable breakdown in Bitcoin dominance, we anticipate or we are in the process of watching this liquidity spill over into the altcoins. Sure.
Exactly. So that's what we look at from a chart perspective is we have the ability to just chill and wait. You know, for those that aren't really into technicals, I would say pay attention to Ethereum. That's traditionally been a big signal, and I would say that when ETH really starts get cooking over 4,000, over 4K, then we'll
Hmm.
really start to see an alt season. But ETH has been lagging BTC. It's
Yep.
really Bitcoin heavy bull run, which again is healthy for Bitcoin. This is the healthiest BTC we've seen ever
This is
because
a
it's more
hundred
mature.
percent.
It's more mature now, and that means that alts should suffer because there's a lot of junk there. A lot of people don't like hearing that because they want to make the hundred and the thousands
No.
that were.
Morpheus is handing you the red pill as we speak. Like the
Yeah,
reason this market looks the way it does is because it's a bunch of nonsense. There's like 50,000 shit coins
yeah,
and no sophisticated investors playing with them. And they're here one day, they're gone the next. So
mhm,
yeah, it's facts. And I think the ETH thing that you brought up is crucial because I am starting to also believe such that like we don't get an alt season until ETH wakes up and decides to break through that 4,000 level, which has been effectively like a triple top at this point. Like we've had three distinct run ups to this. I'm not sure if you want to share a chart or something that we could have to be visual,
yeah.
whether it be you or I, but
Yeah, you have sharing permissions too as well.
okay, wait one second. Let me see if I can get it's the Bitcoin chart at least. My charts have been loading really slow lately for some reason, even though my internet is good. But yeah, this $4,000 level has been rejected on three times, and it's at a technical target of the 888 fib, which is a Fibonacci level that I love to use. It's something that I use in both directions. I loved it in the bear market, and then I flipped it to work in the bull run. And it's also just for those out there that are using TradingView or any charting software. You want to make sure that this setting is turned on when you're on a logarithmic chart So there's a shortcut that you could use on Mac. It's like Option L or Command L. It'll turn the chart logarithmic, and then you just turn this setting on when you pull your fib, and you could add the 888. And that was a effectively three times rejected at that same level. So I agree with Sama. If we see that pump past that $4,000 level with like a weekly close, then I would assume to anticipate everything to start pumping up pretty quickly. And it won't be like this isolated shit that we're seeing right now where it's one meme coin a day that gets rugged and then that's pretty much been the talk of the town. But the structural difference right here, if I was to hide all of our drawings and put it like on a 3-day chart, is you can see in the prior run, we just swiped through all of those levels with zero backtest. And it was up until the bear market that we came back to backtest the blow off from 2018, the early 2018 top. This structure that we're having today is much more drawn out, much more lengthy and boring. And it feels like that is the missing link right now and why things are not feeling, well, let's just say everyone who experienced 2020 to 2021, you were given something that was so unhealthy and so too bullish too soon that now we have to have a boring, choppy staircase cycle, which is what we're seeing in Bitcoin. And I think it's great for Bitcoin to have this type of cycle. I wouldn't want it any other way to just
There's
cycle.
no fear, guys. There's no CARES package and there's no Sam Bankman-Fried. If you want to run like that, that's what you guys need. You need that 1-2
Right.
combo. But we don't have
Yeah,
that, and it's healthier for Bitcoin. Sorry, but this is what we got. You know.
precisely. And this type of chop that we're getting right now, it's kind of been 3 years in a row where we're getting to this kind of Q1, Q2 timeframe stalling out. And I've been telling my people, like, if we were to be hit with another 8 month sideways range, that would still kind of keep us on track before the
And
September
that is
total lunar
possible.
eclipse.
That is
Yeah.
possible. So, yeah.
And that would be very interesting. I want to know what your thoughts are on, let me see if I could get to the specific chart for you so that you can see the way that I have it laid out. This is a chart that I included inside of my crypto decoding blueprint, which I released last year in June. It's a very cool chart that breaks down all of the solar and the lunar cycles. We're not going to go through all of them, but let's just peer into the last one where we have Bitcoin top in April, and then we have this big dump into the lunar eclipse of May,
Mhm.
which was
Mhm.
also combined with Mercury retrograde. So, do you feel that we're prepped and primed for another like major washout like this into March, or do you kind of feel that we'll first have some relief and then get a drop, or do you just feel something completely different from those two scenarios?
I think we're going to rally into the lunar cycle, and there's going to be a pullback downwards. So I look at a lot of things. I look at fundamentals. One of the
Mhm.
most important fundamentals is liquidity. So liquidity is now pushing through the system. There's hundreds of billions that are pushing through now. And so that's kind of helped, I think, some of this, a lot of capitulatory type of news that we're hearing in BTC. We're still at 96K, even though freaking Bybit, Bybit's gotten huge since Binance has been in all this trouble. I think that's why we're still this high. But like you're saying, Bitcoin is at a place technically where we could fall down to 82K. We could fall down and even go to, mid 70s and still be in a healthy place. If we did that, that could drag out through the summer, which, man, people who are in alts would just friggin' hate this cycle even more than they do already. And I wouldn't be surprised if then we then went on to push up later in the year after that as well. Okay. So what you're showing really lines up with how I'm feeling the market will go in a lot of things that I look at, both from the eclipse cycle as well as liquidity and the markets and what's happening with the fundamentals. Because when I break down the astrology of this eclipse, it has to do with debt. And we are in the type of cycle in which the debt ceiling decision needs to be raised in the United States. And with the way this presidency has been going, Trump is due for a lot of pushback as it relates to a lot of the things he's trying to move through. One of the things Trump would love is a very cheap dollar. I don't know if you want to pull up
Mhm.
the DXY, but
Mhm.
this chart is lovely. Let's keep this up. Maybe pull up the DXY in a different tab. If we look at the DXY though, we'll see that we've really since Trump's gotten into office, we're starting to see some of his economics come into play. Trump likes a cheap dollar. We revisited this extremely high level of 110. He wants to push the dollar down to, I would say, yeah, that 96 level, 97 essentially. If he could push it down there, which is really low, that's that blue line you see. If he can do
Yeah, that'd
that,
be right around the bottom of the golden pocket on this prior fib pull, which was the
618.
extreme from 2016 when he was last president, actually, like when he was just getting inaugurated in 2017, down to the swing that happened in 2018. So, funny enough, guys, this whole shit happened after the Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl
Holy shit.
ever.
Hilarious.
Yeah, so
That's
like I'm not trying to say that we're onto some shit here, but like this might be the way. It's like get Daddy Trump in, Eagles win, fucking sink this DXY down. Give us some fucking Hail Mary, you know?
the
But no,
funny thing.
you're definitely onto something. If we do come down, I mean structurally we have a lot going on at 101.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I'm just
that's the top of the golden pocket, so that needs to hold, and that it doesn't need to hold, right? Like we're in crisis mode across the board, so these
yeah,
layers get broken real fast. And yeah, you can see the energy between C19 crash and the way the DXY pumped parabolically into this 1618. This is
yeah,
crazy to see how it
that-
respected this fib
yeah,
level. So for
yeah.
me, I feel like this is the king fib to have on the DXY from this 2017 swing down to 2018. We
Mhm.
swiped the 1618 golden ratio. We came back to test the top of the golden pocket for a long time. I mean, 2 years before this pop up recently. So this
Yeah.
was super technical. And you see this green line here. This is just the current parallel channel that we've been in. Like if I was to pull up a parallel channel, maybe I could do it on a cleaner chart for everyone so they could see. Um, I have a couple of these going on, but let's just pull it like that. That's where most of our action's been. And we
Mhm.
would probably be back testing this soon. It,
Mhm.
it it could bounce though. That's the weird thing that could go on from
Yeah.
March, April is something
That-
like this. Like if we were to have it go boom and then into April have another shift and then a lower high and then a breakdown like into the late summer, fall.
that's basically my prediction, man. That's what I think we're looking at this year is as we get into eclipse season that the dollar might push higher because Trump gets resistance from raising the debt ceiling. So there's just some drama in DC, which again, don't panic if you guys are seeing this because his intention, as you guys can see from 2018, is to push the dollar down to 100, if not lower. What that will do for all of you who will live across the world as well as in the States is it will push asset prices higher. It will make the ability to print money cheaper across the world. It will counteract some of the tariffs that are going to come through. It'll help with some of what's happening with inflation, but it will ultimately have the end result of making life more inflationary later, towards the end of his presidency.
Yeah,
All right.
kicking the can down the road.
Yeah. So again, this is a year to take profits, particularly if we see this coming down towards the lower 100 target, the yellow line that you see here. If you see this taking place and the dollar breaks through this upper yellow line here that you see just under 105 here, that
Hmm.
he has shown here for you guys, then that means the green light is on basically for the rally to continue. And that would be a good, from a technical perspective, if you're out of the market and you wanted to enter, that would be essentially Trump and Jerome Powell and the Fed are shaking hands. They're in agreement and they're going to work together to provide a cheap dollar. But that has to come through the approval of Congress. And so what we're going to see with the eclipses, because these eclipses are happening in a sign that's related to debt, something is either going to pop with either he's going to be halted with raising the ceiling or there's going to be problems and issues with the U.S. Treasury Department, which he's already kind of been saying weird stuff about that on the news. Doge is trying to audit that, even though they don't really have the authority to do that. That's a It's really again
We
like
are in a
you and I were
scam.
talking about with your community. They're trying to build another system that's just different from what America is and transition us to
Yeah,
that.
they're trying to get everyone to believe that the system is obviously a sham, the one we're currently using, so that
So
they
let's
can
go with this
usher in.
even more restrictive system.
They're like,
Nanobots do, and Neuralink, so we can, yeah.
yeah. And every tactic that they're using to show the illegitimacy is like, look at how people that are 150 years old are collecting Social Security. Do you want this to be more precise? Okay, well, here's your more precise blockchain system that will be even more tracked and traced and more draconian. Yeah, so it's the perfect kind of setup to build all this hopium and the Patriot kind of QAnon psyop and then drag all the Elon, droolers into this, and then now they're in a camp together. And then you also add the additional elements of like big investment coming from the AI sector. And now so many people are invested in AI that it's almost like they don't want it to be uh they don't want it to be a problem. They believed sincerely it's a solution purely for their financial benefit from the stocks they've invested in, which is fucking crazy. It's like if you learn that that are all the batteries that you get for these electric cars, if you learned that like children were picking this cobalt, like mining this cobalt with their bare hands, and their like fingernails are like melting off the tips, you would invest in that still if you knew that was the way just because you want to make more money. The investment thesis needs to like almost completely shut off the like other element of it. So it's like, okay, by investing in AI and pushing that agenda more, I'm effectively wanting 70% of the world's population to get laid off and replaced. It's kind of like we're at that pinnacle moment, guys, where we have to ask ourselves, like, just kind of be careful what it is that you think is the thing that's going to make you rich, because that
Yeah.
it's at the expense of us funding the Aquarian economy. We're literally funding it. So this might be one of the few the like last years
Mhm.
to benefit from the pump before the physical change occurs, like where your Uber driver is not a person anymore. It's just a humanoid robot. This might be the last year where like we really get to like have that. And I know
Yep.
that might sound too extreme to people, but I very much feel next year, the year of the horse, when I look back historically,
Not
it's
extreme.
actually
I
I'm glad you agree.
It's almost factual, man. This is part of the stuff like for people like us who really look at this, like I don't know if you've had sleepless nights, but this is just one of those years. Like if you value being a human being, if you value the normal experience of being human, you should definitely enjoy this year for what it will be because life is going to continually look very different after 25, particularly even after this eclipse even. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we get two big eclipse. We do have two big eclipses this year, but I think there's going to be isolated events for both of them, and I definitely think they'll impact markets. And I think there will be one true euphoric opportunity this year where it's obvious that like shit's too good to be true. Um,
Mm.
but what's your take on you said multiple times earlier that you don't believe the bull run is over. So do you also feel that like Bitcoin has the opportunity to head into like the 120, 130, 140 levels? Are you anticipating a really wild, like crazy liquidity injection, QE? Like what are some of your thoughts on that?
So what's going on with the global economy is if we don't get an injection of liquidity, then we're looking at a crash. I don't think Trump
Yeah.
wants that. So I can't tell you definitively how that's going to go. I can just tell you that these are the mechanics that we're dealing with. And so part of one of the product offerings that I offer every year is a yearly report. And one of the things I talk about that is this huge pullback that is very likely to happen in the middle of the year. Right. And so after that, after a big pullback, what can happen? You can have a big rally. Things reset, indicators reset, algorithms start buying, so that can put the market in a position where if Bitcoin does come down to 82K, Bitcoin does come down to 70, and people are completely scared or terrified of this market, even though we have a cheaper dollar that's headed to 100, if we have those kind of mechanics, then you have the runway. And if liquidity is coming in, to, let's say, prevent from a crash, or if Jerome and Trump understand the situation enough to act ahead of time, which is almost never the case, it's always usually after the fact, then maybe we don't see such a severe pullback. But I'm looking at this being a very yo-yo like year in which we see the S&P making major drops. We see Bitcoin making major drops to where printing liquidity is demanded of. Now, maybe it's not just because markets fall. Maybe it's because of something environmental. Some of that could be an issue as it relates to the eclipses as well, right? We could see some environmental damage or things happening in the world stage where it's like, once again, oh, this is nobody's fault. Let's turn the printers on type of a scenario. But I look at this year as being one of a lot of volatility, and there being pullbacks that can reset the algos in which liquidity then will come in and push things higher. If that
Mhm.
liquidity doesn't come in by the time we get around the September eclipses, governments, including the United States, are going to have a very difficult time paying these debts that they rose the interest rates on for the past couple of years. And so this is where we're in a situation where Trump has no choice but to get money printed, and the Fed has no choice to revise their inflation targets and say, hey, we can't do this whole 2% thing. Sorry, that was cap. We're going to print money.
Mhm.
It's either that or they let the market just fall this year, and they're not going to do that. So, how they go about doing it depends, but I would expect some sideways action or some pullbacks until there's resolution and until we get that monetary injection. It's their only solution in the playbook. They have to print money this year. When they're going to do it, will it be in April? It could be. There's some signatures in April that look very nice, whereas the astrology from March, not so much, right? So maybe the whole debt ceiling drama eclipse thing is for a couple of weeks. But looking at the chart you have with the lunar cycles and just how BTC moves typically and how markets move typically, this looks like your typical sell in May scenario to me, right? Go enjoy your summer, come back in July when Uranus enters Gemini, and maybe there's a resurgence in the AI trade. I talk a little bit about that in my yearly report. But yeah, I'm looking at this like there's got to be a major pullback and a liquidity injection this year. Those are the two things that I think are almost a guarantee is a pullback and a liquidity injection.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like when we're looking at some of these charts, it's pretty wild to see what Solana's done and everything that was happening around the manipulation for the inauguration, how everything sort of in harmony hit a new all-time high and then got pulled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for the top coins for the most part. And then we're getting these like week after week after week after week negative events all throughout the month of February. It's making some people in my community especially feel like, well, maybe that is the top for now.
Mm-hmm.
And we get sucked into the eclipse first. And that is like you were just absolutely drained emotionally. Everything sucks. You hate this bull run, insert quote of despair. And
Mm-hmm.
that's precisely the moment that the market does a V bottom, like a true V bottom, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Because if
Yeah.
we look at past Bitcoin cycles, this has been nothing, bro. 11%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is
It's not.
nothing. Like if we go back just to this cycle right here, we had well, by the way, everyone who's watching this, we're just looking at the last bull run.
Mm-hmm.
30% right there.
Yeah.
Another leg higher. This was 27. This was probably 22. It's around 20 here. This was definitely showing weakness, 27, but we got a little bit of a bull trap before it keeled
Yeah.
over. Even in the midst of this too, 25. I mean, then you have this cycle where it was all 30 to 40% pullbacks.
Yeah.
Like that shit's fucked up. Look at this. Right here. That
40%.
imagine that would
That's that's fucked up.
yeah,
Hey,
and
that's
and this would be like going into the eclipse. Like
that's lower
imagine
lows too. That's like not only is that that's like scary to watch. Like
yeah.
yeah.
But then you look at the recovery, like the next day there was a 16% pump, 4 days later 27%, and you were V recovered and even higher than where you were before you started showing weakness. So
Yeah.
like for anyone watching this, like this could also be the play, and I'm going to talk about this upcoming Sunday on my Red Pill podcast that I do for my Patreon. But like if they're gonna hand us something like this, then what we might see actually is a lot of the wick that came in from the recent liquidation event, like for
Mm,
XRP, for instance, this wick filled all the way like or 175. That could be the case where we fill out that. I'm not calling for this, but I'm saying like if they really wanted max pain and like a max just get all of you out of here, well, that could be the turn of events. And fuck man, like that would be ultra negative. That would be complete wipeout of sentiment. But that's kind of the environment that is C19 like, where you just get everyone to panic and
Mm,
then the apex predator pops you back up. But I actually agree more with what you said earlier that I feel late February relief is actually quite common, and March has been a very toppy month for Bitcoin. Even back in 2017, we had a short-term top right over
mm,
here. I'll show you. And I've been kind of talking about this more and more and more lately just because of the environment we're in right now. Sorry, it's right here. So you see, we made this big jolt up into early January. Then we have the January full moon correction. It'll
mm,
pop up in a second. So January full moon correction, pop up to recover, and then when we get to February, we do get a pretty volatile shakeout here.
mm,
Full moon, a February pullback, and then we rose into the February new moon,
mm.
extended a little bit higher than it, topped
Yeah.
out in very early March, and then you see this March 10th event. This would
Mm,
be like similar to what we just experienced recently on February 2nd or 3rd. Just a
mm.
crazy
Yeah.
panic moment where you're super high up, super low, finish
Mm,
in this weird kind of like Darth Maul candle, and then you rise up a little bit before a true uh correction. This was 10 days for crypto is a pretty long time to be dropping 30%. So absolute sentiment wipeout, but when you look at the recovery, it was a V shape, just like here it was a V shape, and we were
yeah.
pushed back up in the following month. So
Mm,
if you look at April 26th, we were already pushing higher from
mm,
the lows on March 25th. In one calendar month, we were right back in it. So
mm.
in either scenario, whether they do push us up a little bit and we get like stalled out at 102, 103K Bitcoin and then they pull us down, or if they just pull us down now to like the high 70s, you got to
Mm.
realize that that could all be recovered pretty fucking fast, especially with the sentiment being in extreme fear.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of similarities, man. Like again, we have liquidity to push higher for a couple of weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if we start pulling back and again just destroying sentiment and then rallying again a couple of weeks later. That wouldn't surprise me. It also wouldn't surprise me if we just move sideways till July either. It really depends on what happens on the world stage, but like once that liquidity runs out, then from a macro perspective, it's what's being done in DC to get the tap running and what's happening on the world stage that can either help support how urgent they are about that or what's happening that's making them lag or delay that. But that's not something that they won't eventually approve. They will raise the debt ceiling. They're not going to default this year. So while we're waiting, do not lose your minds. Don't panic. I don't see the bull run being over.
Yeah, some people have brought up this because there's this one connection to the Philadelphia teams winning championships and how have you seen that list of like how every time a Philadelphia team wins a championship, we have like a huge market drawdown, maybe sometimes a crash, sometimes a recession.
No, I have not seen that. No, but it is
Okay.
pretty.
It is interesting and it's very lacking in data. And I went through this last week when I did my last Red Pill podcast. And effectively, what I found was during the 2 years that the 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers won, it was incredible years for the stock market. So it was contrary to what the data was for the Philadelphia Athletics, the Eagles, and the one Super Bowl they won. So, anyways, what we're looking at right now is the Eagles won the Super Bowl in this particular year. Think like Super Bowl Sunday was like right here, and you could see we just pummeled down into a very extreme low following Tuesday. So the correction throughout that week alone was about 40%. But then we popped up about 100%. And where we stalled out was the same fucking day I just showed you for 2017. It was March 5th. So, like, what's going on here with the patterning? There's something about this where early March seems to be like an if we are up time, don't get greedy to the upside. Like, consider securing some of your profits if you're profitable because it can get bad. It could either return back to the same levels that we were once faced with, or it could be the start of a bear market, which I'm not saying is the case. But we've only seen an 11 to 15% pullback in Bitcoin. And look at what it did to the altcoins with this type of dominance. So if we don't see dominance keel over in this correction in March, or the correction that could potentially be leading into Eclipse season, then we're talking even more blood in the streets for altcoins. And there's already altcoins that are down near their bear market lows.
Yeah. which is crazy. But what would change sentiment to get dominance down? I don't know.
I don't think there's any,
there's nothing that jumps out in the charts to me that would make people just love alts in the next couple of weeks right now. Which
right?
again, if we do go down to that, you even have 72,500 highlighted here. If we go down to this level, I don't think people are going to be too happy with their altcoin positions at all. But that would be if you have alts that have genuine value, that would be a very interesting time to maybe re-enter if that's your kind of thing.
I've been
There,
putting a lot of emphasis lately on de-risking, and people don't like it, but I mean, I've just been trying to tell people that because not everyone's in the same financial situation. Like some people have very good cash flows, some people have $10 million. Like I've had clients with $15 million.
let's take
Sorry?
the assumption that if you're playing with alts, that maybe you're not the best capitalized. Maybe. All right.
Yeah. So this is a potential scenario, and I've been working with some amazing clients over the past couple of years, specifically some pretty high net worth people, and they even have four, five, $600,000 in this market. Like I have some people that have $10 million in this market, you know? So when a day like yesterday happens or when a day like February 3rd happens, they're watching millions melt off their portfolio, you know? And then we have people that are $500 in the market, you know? So everyone's in a different situation. And that's people need to remember that when they hear me use these terms like de-risking, because unfortunately, I don't have the privilege like you have of maybe only speaking to a couple friends or family. You know, when I'm speaking to somebody in
Right.
the crowd, it's like you
Yeah.
might be talking to your brother, sister, your mother. Like I'm
Mhm.
talking to 100,000 people. So realize that I'm trying to hold this posture, but I also am not a proponent of being 100% of my net worth in fucking crypto. That's insane.
Yeah.
I've never once said such a thing or ever said that you should put 100% of your portfolio in altcoins. Never, not once. So yeah, we're in this environment right now where I feel if the market maker has some tricks up their sleeve, like I think there's always a more painful scenario, and it could be like the one that we experienced back over here, where they chopped us around, gave the what we would hope for though is this rally, the give some relief and then pull the plug. Or at least one of these, you know, where it's a lower high and then pull the plug.
Mhm.
At this time, though, this is like the lowest volatility trading range I've seen Bitcoin in a long time, you know, like where it's just been trapped in this very, very tight band. At least
Mhm.
over here, it was in price discovery, but now we've already accomplished these prices. So to see, like on the 8 hour chart, the Bollinger Bands get this tight, it's very strange. Let me see if I
Yeah.
could get it on the other chart. But one thing that I brought up was this,
So,
and this is a very
uh,
hopeful.
yeah, go ahead, continue.
I was going to say this is a very hopeful scenario in the short term. If we were to see the DXY break down,
Mhm.
and then we get pulled back into this prior resistance instead of bouncing as support, and then
Mhm.
that full blown breakout into breakdown into August, like what I suspect might be the most bullish time for the market,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
that rebound after the September lunar eclipse. But what is your opinion about the 4 year cycle? Like the idea that November or December have typically been when Bitcoin has like its complete blow off every 4 years, which so far is the truth. 2021, November, it wasn't a euphoric all time high, but it was a true new all time high. So, what's your opinion on November 2025? Do you think we have the juice to make it there? Obviously, it's very speculative, but from the astrological perspective, I would love to know your thoughts.
Astrologically and fundamentally, I don't see anything different in BTC from its behavior around that time period. I'm expecting similar behavior to be honest. Even when particularly if it plays out this way, which is what I'm leaning towards with my base case, which is why we kind of went through the whole dollar
Hmm.
scenario. Even energetically with what will be happening with eclipses around that time, they're not. And I'll speak more about those eclipses as we get closer, but
Hmm.
we're going to have the planet Uranus, which brings shocks and revolution and change, finally leaving the sign of currencies and moving into the air sign of Gemini, which has been supported by Jupiter this whole time. So that's new energy. To me, that means the AI trade is actually going to, or AI in general, is actually going to bring change to how we live life. So we might now start to see AI agents being a part of the economy or robots or something is going to enter either the workforce or the economy or way of life and shift in a way that to me, I'm perceiving a sense of bullishness is going to re-enter the market around that time period. And it's going to involve liquidity. I think that
Hmm.
liquidity can end up resulting in another type of top around the typical time frame of October, November this year? So good question. I'd definitely dive into that more in my 2025 report, which people can check out. But Bitcoin's behavior is there's an affinity for these time periods of March and April and October, November, December. It likes those time periods. It's something to pay attention to. You know, it typically doesn't like September. September again is a yet another eclipse season. So these are things just to know. Like if you like Bitcoin, you should generally know this about the months. And as you keep in mind what I've just said in respect to the chart that you just showed with the lunar cycles, I think that's something for people to consider and not to freak out about what happens around the middle of the year too much, particularly if it's related to issues around liquidity. Because unless they want to let the market just fall into the abyss and not have tax receipts and not pay off their debts, the printer's got to run at some point, and it has to be this year. It has to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man, there's so much on the horizon, and it feels like one of those moments where it's kind of like eerie, you know what I mean? Like there's this eeriness that I think a lot of people are feeling, and maybe that's why people are getting very overreaction, like this overreaction to all of these things that have unfolded over the past just like 2 months, bro. Like we had LA fires, you know, like we have planes crashing every day. Like every day you go into X and there's like some
there's
missing
something going
plane.
on. There's something going
There's
on.
something weird, and like you've seen the movie Leave the World Behind, right?
So I haven't, but this stuff is going to continue, you guys, because of who's being attacked now and how war has shifted. I did talk about this in an interview. I don't really remember which, because there's so much to talk about as it relates to what's happening in the world. But this is an example of how World War III is different from World War II. Is we're in a position now where people can be identified or attacked individually, and there's operations happening that they just don't make sense. We can't wrap our head around it. We are we're swimming in layers of confusion that we haven't quite dealt with before. And part of what you need to understand is that that is by design. And so communities like yours, where people are, again, concerned about things that are real, really transacting in real value, these are things that help you keep a layer of sanity because this stuff is intentionally not meant to be understood. Like, why is a helicopter just right there or just like moving all of a sudden into the path of a plane that has clearance to land? This is not anything
Right.
new. These planes have had clearance to do what they've been doing since aviation has started, right? So there's a lot of things where like you don't know if there was somebody of importance that needed to be killed on that plane. Like we just don't know. We're kept in the dark about the way
I
these
mean,
things.
most of them are private jets. Like most of them are Lear jets and Cessnas, and like yeah, they're small, like four, like you know, six passenger jets. So yeah,
Sometimes things happen where it's like somebody wants to take somebody else out and they're so powerful that the news scrubs it and we just go on to live another day and we won't understand why or what we just saw for 10, 20 years, if ever, you know? So keep your wits about you, hug your kids, love your families, and again, you know, stick to things that are real and true and people that can really help you navigate these times because confusion is a part of it. It really is a part of what's happening and what makes this weird, are we at war? Are we not? Yeah, we are. And us as individuals or as citizens, we're a part of being managed. And so we're not in such an environment, we're not really meant to understand what's happening. So the confusion is only going to increase, and that is by design because if you know what's happening and you're not confused, then you'll navigate it differently, right? So we're here speaking on it to help each other kind of navigate that in a way where what is the truth and how does it relate to our purpose and what we're meant to be doing. That's really what it comes down to and what's most important.
right. What do you feel is like a time where it would make sense to have a lot more noticeable artificial intelligence in our world, like humanoid robots specifically. Like when do you anticipate the time frame for that to
As
become a lot more
early
noticeable?
as early as this July and as late as 2027.
That's crazy that you bring up July because I feel that X payments and X money is probably going to get released like full blown released probably by the end of the summer.
Mm.
So that would definitely be interesting because that's kind of how you prepare a peoples for a world that'll be mostly humanoid robots, right? Like you need to give them systems to transact this funny money where it maybe doesn't feel like dollars initially. Like we've seen this with video games where they give you XP points. We've seen this like with rewards points and like the way that all of these credit card companies have come up with this stuff. It's very incentivizing. So like I
That
don't think they could move. Hmm?
has, has to be very like part of one of the big incentivization things you'll see with governments when they're playing games is giving out free money. That's a big red flag that some shenanigans are going on. So whether that happens with central bank digital currencies or other forms of money, whether it even happens with Bitcoin or with land, there are reasons to be suspicious of handouts like that that seemingly come out of nowhere. Like I think they're talking about now giving $5,000 checks or something like that. Like what is
Yeah,
that
like a
for?
Doge dividend.
If you have this money, why aren't you fixing real fucking problems, right? It's usually you're getting paid off to ignore something. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's very true. I mean, definitely alarming to hear about this $5,000 Doge dividend, and I'm sure it will get an overwhelming amount of support from people that don't know how money markets work and don't know how the Fed works and don't know like they don't actually understand the consequences of moving forward with such a thing, but also they're kind of like feeling like they deserve something because of how shitty everything's been and how expensive everything's been. And these tariffs have made food even more expensive for the everyday man. So, I mean, damn, like, do you feel that there's going to be any like positive I don't want to say necessarily positive energy, but I think we could all agree that the past 2 months specifically have felt very like low vibe. When do you
Yeah.
think that like energy is going to get released?
So done. Mars is going to be done retrograding out of the sign of Cancer, which it's not very happy in. That's going to be refreshing, and one of the really beneficial energies for crypto related investors, and those types of things is going to be happening when Saturn sextiles Uranus in April. So I think there's a
When will
reprieve.
that be?
That's about mid-April. I don't know if it's like so Venus gets out of retrograde on the 12th, I believe. I don't remember off the top of my head when the sextile is, but the second half of April, I think it might be a lot of new fresh energy that I think will at a minimum it'll feel different to what's going on, particularly if March is challenging. But I think we could see potentially, like we showed an example, whether it's a rally in the charts, but there should be a change in energy mid-April that feels refreshing, feels better. And there will be another change in energy in July too, as it relates to tech and AI. I hope that stuff is positive, but it's going to be new for sure, and we won't be able to turn back from it. So we'll just have to get used to whatever happens in July. But yeah, yeah, I don't see it as all bad. Again, like there will be plenty of opportunity for people who are aware of what's happening to use the change and the tools to create new communities and environments that are beneficial. But I think it's important to understand what certain people are up to in order to create that. And so there's certain initiatives that need to come through for a new control grid to be built. Like you mentioned, LA fire as well. Certain people need to be displaced for BlackRock to come in and create new housing structures that they think they want to put people in, or to create data centers that might have, uranium or access to metals underground that can help power AI, which is very resource intensive. And then powering AI involves, equipment or tools that are going to be running 24/7, whether that's components of 5G or what is it called, Starlink, or, some of these other things that involve construction projects that are going to be related to feeding information, to that grid, that are going to be speaking to different nanobots that are in your objects that are in human beings or in humanoids or in robots. So that's the vision of the world that they have, right? They talk about drones replacing police and, nanobots being the new forms of medicine. So
Hmm.
these are things where it's pretty obvious. Like, and you can look at, the charts don't lie, right? Most of the American companies aren't extremely bullish, but you see Nvidia, Palantir, Tesla. These are the companies that are a large part in collaboration with the DoD that are building this control grid and are building these technologies. So it's very easy, like if you want to fund that grid, to know what companies to put your money in and to know who to watch in terms of where we're progressing towards that, that version of reality that some people are funding, whether it's through their pensions or their 401k or working directly for such companies or whatever it might be, right?
Hmm.
But there are also energies in the sky aligning that will allow people to use tech and AI to build counteracting versions that are smaller, based communities that are more free, different currencies that people are using, whether they're in crypto or going back to older forms of cash. So that's some of what we're seeing too, is just like how what we lived through in COVID forced people to shift and pivot, right? It got me out of the corporate world. It got you doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
Anything that's perceived as negative as we head towards that control grid that they want to build is only going to create an equal and opposite reaction in which people make something better, cooler, different, an alternative to that, So that's really where we're headed, is more pressure is going to increase that allows things to speed up in both those directions. And if you're listening to this, then you have some choice and some agency in what you want to support and what version of reality you want to experience. You're not doomed to going down the path of the control grid if you don't want to, you know. And knowing that that's coming, you might be able to set up a scenario where you can live adjacent to it, you can bounce in and out of it. Maybe you're in it in a way that works for you. Maybe you're not in it at all. Maybe you're completely pissed by what I'm saying and you're gonna go, I don't know, go to war with Tesla or Elon. I don't know. It's really, again, knowing where the trends are headed. What is your purpose? What is your experience in this incarnation for? And using the waves of change and where the tides are headed to help navigate you to where you're meant to end up being. Right. So part of what we were talking about earlier is working with like-minded people who are leadership minded and getting them more educated on monetizing their value and sharing that with the world, because that's what's of interest to you and to me, right? That's how we're responding to what I'm saying about the trends and the forecasts are ahead. I know somebody's typing in the comments right now, this is all doom and gloom. It doesn't. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's doom and gloom if you think you have no agency and that you must join the grid that's being built. Oh, I must give my 401k to Tesla to destroy my. No, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to do any of this stuff, Nor do you have to feel like what I'm saying is negative. You don't have to feel like what I'm saying is positive. It's just information. You have agency to continue, responding to things as you wish. There's a dance element, there's a judo element to what's coming with you and what you do with it,
Right.
and the rest of our own lives. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just interpreting symbolism and telling you what I'm going to do. That's it.
Precisely.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective on the markets. I really love the charts that you share when you break down the different zones and talk about how the different years played out. And they give us a glimpse, a different glimpse than what I look at in terms of how markets might play out. And it's always interesting how we're looking at different systems, but there's always a bit of I don't want to say we're always coming to the same conclusions, but they're always, at least in our experience so far, they've always been very similar in terms of how we're seeing things. And I don't want to say we're always right about things, but here we are with the market up, very similar to how we talked about it last time. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out through the summer and when we get through, October, November again. Hopefully people
Right.
are doing a lot better than they are now. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's one of
And
those years where, like, I think,
that happens this time too, right? I think we've done a lot of
yeah,
lectures about that today. So,
yeah,
yeah.
no, 100%. That was definitely what I was gonna like follow that up with. It's like this is one of those opportunities to not be on the wrong side of the wealth transfer and you were getting used for someone else's wealth transfer. Like,
Yeah.
because that's all these bull runs, that's all they really are, you know? So when we reach a place where you're in a profitable situation, it won't even really matter if you don't have a plan for where you'll put that money. So like if
Mhm.
there's any big takeaway from this conversation, it's like this is really not the year to fuck around, right? We were saying this in 2024. Whoever listened had a much better, 2024. We were saying this 2023. It's been what I've been preaching since I started my work. And I think that people with this Trump situation, like they feel like we're in a golden age and everything's going to get better because of some political change of leadership. And then what's so hilarious is like maybe 2 weeks ago, there's like this meme going around that's like Biden was really the crypto president, you know? And it's like, it just goes to show you we need to have something to point blame to, right? It went from bull run forever because Trump won to like now what's going on, where the market, some altcoins are lower than the day the day he won the election. So just be very careful of all that shit. If you're listening to this and you've been somebody who's become like very believing in these elements or what's going to create insert outcome, because this is probably the easiest time ever for the elite to just hypnotize everyone
Yeah.
when people are already weak financially, spiritually, and they're all communicating on devices, which is nothing, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's definitely a tool that they use that they weaponize against us as they have. And this is just one of those moments to be like, yeah, man, if you weren't taking this seriously last year, I really, really hope that more people are taking it seriously this year and they're not just waiting around for politicians or for Doge to like, fix some problems because anything that they're saying they're fixing, it's just to replace the old and put in the new. And the new is something that's been told to us by the central planners for a
Mm.
fucking 100 years. This is
Yeah.
nothing new. This is just us moving more into the Aquarian essence. And in that Aquarian essence will be identity is gone. And you'll just be left with like,
That's
well,
a, yeah.
what do
That's
I do now? And it'll be, I mean, I'm sensing there's some other conversations that me and you could have about this for sure too in the future regarding some of these developments that are to come, where we've gotten very comfy having these avatar kind of replacements. I think even women using these filters on Instagram and TikTok, and like a lot of people have just gotten very comfy using these things. Even rich people who like flaunt all their wealth, like they use their cars that they own and their watches and all of that, like that's all going to get flipped on its head this year and into next year. And I think it'll just get more and more noticeable. What I'm saying is a truth. And I'm not saying that to like feel better about myself. It's actually going to reveal to you the strength of the ego. Most people do not have an ego at all. Like it's so weak that there won't even be any pushback. And perhaps they'll be too financially drained to push back at all. And that right there is a very strange time to live in. It's very like 20s like when I studied the 20s. I see these like
mm,
speculative bubbles popping up left, right, and center. And whilst the elite of the elite are just building out the rails for the next thing they're going to implement, and they literally implemented it. And how did they do it? With two fucking wars back to back. Like, so guys, like, I think what we've been watching unfold lately, like, although some of the elements of it are silly, there's a lot of it that's very, very real. And I think 2026 is not the year to wait and wait and wait for. You know what I mean? Like what a lot of people did with 25.
there's a lot of technologies being tested out in the Middle East right now that once they perfect, then the rest of the world's going to get to experience. Like there's just so many, there's just so many distractions, you guys. Be careful, make your money. Don't be a sucker. Don't be an idiot. Take profits this year and connect with like-minded people because identity is disappearing. That is definitely something I want to talk with you about because
100%.
yeah, that's a very real thing. And not only just the whole cars and flaunting, but we're talking about like another second death to religions. It's going to get very weird when this whole AI thing really gets settled into place and this new system that they're working on, if we allow it to get installed, what that may look like. Because what Pluto returns tell us is that what was built for about 300 years gets destroyed, and then you have a new 300-year system, essentially. This is reminiscent of the previous industrial revolution and the French one. You know, these
Hmm.
are things that happened hundreds of years ago. So America is being rebuilt. One of the predictions I made years ago is that this might be the last normal presidency America ever sees. You know, and now this guy's talking about Greenland and Canada and all this stuff. Like, so things are dramatically. Our Constitution in America is more under attack than it ever has been. I know politicians say that all the time, but in terms of the astrology and the cycles, it's legitimate. So we'll see where this country heads, man. I'll continue to share my little perspective about it. I don't think it's going to have much of a dent on what those people are doing in DC, but at a minimum, I want people who are like-minded and care about this stuff to be aware that, this way of life that we've known and we've gotten used to, just like it disappeared and changed after 2020, we're heading into a similar change that we won't be able to turn back from. And so I'm going to take this year seriously in terms of getting my ducks in a row, like Waters and Sam are saying here. You know, that's what this message is really for.
100%. All right, brother. Well, let's reconnect very soon. I'm sure we'll have you back on in our university. I'm really excited to share that interview with our community over there. They all love you, and I'm excited to have you share this over on your world, and hopefully people take it as more of a preparation and more of like a playful kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
take on a very serious topic and many very doom and gloom kind of esque things, but I don't think we come off of as those people as much as some people might imagine. At the end of the day, I think it's more about just being motivated to take action, if anything. It's about taking action. It's not about complaining or bitching about the future. It's just about take action. If there's anything that my work stands for, it's just that. And crypto bull run, stock bull run, gold bull run, whatever bull run, just realize that this is a very, very strange environment for people with the value of all things just being expensive. So I agree with what you said before about like some things might just be going through a reset and they need to have this crypto kind of scam come to the face of the world for what it is, like a majority of it, what I'm saying. Obviously, there's some legitimate things, some actual working technology, but in my first bull run, I didn't see this many altcoins in existence. And then the
Yeah, there
NFTs
were.
came around, and then the Solana stuff started and Pump Fund, and like now it's just full blown like clown world.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it needs to get really disgusting before it could be cleaned. That's just the nature of this matrix. When the elite allow humans, like basic people, to just fuck off and do create all of our own stuff, which is what Solana has become, where anyone could just wake up and make their own meme coin. Like, if that's the world we actually think is better, then you'll probably realize soon after that that world is so much more dirty and fucked up than a world that is actually more centralized and has less opportunities for people to run amok. So I'm not a fan of controlling anybody or anything, but I just hope people realize be careful what you wished for. Because now that if we were to, and I won't go on too long about this, but like everyone says that they have these problems with the way the world operates, but you like your garbage being picked up, right? You like when you flush your toilet for your waste to go somewhere else. Like you like when you turn on the electricity, the switch in your room to turn the light on, it turns on, right? So
yeah.
like I hope
That
people see what
can be
I'm
solved with
coming from with this.
travel, honestly. That can be solved with travel. And some people don't have the money to travel, but it's like you really learn when you travel that it's just different. It's just pick your poison because you can go to a place with plenty of freedoms. They are out there, but they don't have like the grid and the security of like a first world country, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
so yeah, there's some benefits to centralization and there's corruption that'll come with that sometimes, you know? But
Yeah, I
it's
get what I was revealing is that I think they got us in a corner here where like we got so used to one thing and then we started to hate it and then now we're hating the next thing and then we're so polarized. We're like
mm,
it's so stretched to where the band's gonna snap. And I am one of those people where I'm like, I rather have one foot in the matrix, one foot out. Like I love having clean water coming out of the tap. I love
mm,
having internet so I could connect with you on a podcast. Like that exists because of a system that's been engineered to be what it is right now. What we're going through or in the process of transitioning into will just be, oh, was my local farmer important? Well, we decided to make food cheaper by having it picked by robots.
Mm,
Oh, so that was now my food's cheaper because I got rid of the people involved and I don't need to pay the robot. So like, oh, you wanted cheaper food? This is the only way we can do it, guys. And that's that problem reaction solution Hegelian thing that they're gonna put us through. Like I know how it's gonna go. So I'm
yeah.
just telling people this. It's like, that old world that like had some problems and
Position
had some
This is the position corporations are in right now because of COVID, right? It's
100%.
alien dialectic is, oh, nobody wants to work. Well, I have to hire these agents. And then we all get fired, right? So this is how they play us all the time is we just we get inched closer and closer and closer to our own demise. It's high Hegelian dialectic all the way.
Hmm. So that's really what I wanted to end it with is like I think there's a lot of people riding the wave of like the positivity from political changes that have become a thing, especially in America. Then there's another camp of people specifically to our work that are very hopeful on like bull run. My portfolio goes to the moon, which it's still in the cards in some capacity. And there's
Mm.
just all this hope. And what happens to the human spirit is when you only hope but you take no action, then you become a waiter. You just wait and wait and wait and wait. And if it doesn't go your way, then you're fucked. So like I'm just trying to get people to like kind of tap into that knowing of like, sure, you're invested. You have this 4 years under this guy or under whoever political leadership around the world that you're under. Just fucking move on from all that shit. Like, put your energy into something that allows you to feel a sense of purpose and to be useful to the world. And right there, I think you'll be able to pivot better whenever any changes come or whenever any crisis happens. Because I think that might that's like the C-19 situation where the only people that really got to go through it nicely are the ones that were just preparing, setting themselves up for that eventual thing. Like, I mean, didn't Bill Gates tell us in like 2 years prior that they were gonna do that to us? Like, they literally told you. Like, I think Klaus Schwab said we're gonna have a cyber attack. Like,
Mm.
they're just telling us. So, I mean, at this point, we can't even be mad at them. At least they're giving us some clues, you know?
There'll be a cyber attack, there'll be digital ID. Like all this stuff is they tell us. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not interested in that. What's your timeline? Okay, great. Like that's basically what we're doing here. It's like, okay, that's not what I'm interested in. We'll look at charts and see what we can do to navigate in a different direction. All right.
100%.
Nothing is hopeless. Nothing is lost, you guys. So thanks for hanging out with us. We'll do this again soon. And yeah, you guys can check out Waters Above at the links below. I'll put on my channel, and you guys can check me out at the financialastrologer.com. See you next time.